My name is Rima, but a lot of you guys actually don't know that. Because I've gone by Merritt, Kendall, Shadow Slake, and Chris. I've been both a girl and a guy. I've been a voice in the darkness, but I've also been a public face. And more so than anything, I'm Maya Brava. I'm a freelance graphic designer. I'm someone who loves to laugh, and I love making people laugh. I am part of this AMV community on YouTube after I dropped commentary, and I still do commentary from time to time. I'm an author. I like to think that I can lead. I'm half of this crazy duo called Double Death, and I am more than Rima ever wished that she could be. Now, I'm not saying that Maya and Rima are different people, but we are two faces of one coin. We're not living the same life as one. So I'm here to tell everyone a little bit about Rima and how she's changed for better or worse. But we're also going to do this in Maya's style, because let's be honest, she does not let things get boring. But just to make things clear, I am speaking from two different voices almost, Rima and Maya, because they both have an anthology waiting to be told. I got my head out of my ass pretty young. I've always had an ego, which is kind of a weird thing, because I also knew that I wasn't the center of the universe. There were things far out of my control that affected everyone, and I knew that. I knew I was never to blame for anything that happened in my household, anything bad that happened. But also, when bad things happened, it made me quiet. It quieted the ego, and so I was silently arrogant. I knew where my morals laid, but I would sooner bite my tongue than defend them. They always said never be a bystander, and, I didn't want to. But how was I supposed to report other people's business when I was just too afraid to even open my mouth to go to the bathroom? Introvert. That's what I was. Not just shy, I was a friggin' introvert. Introvert, as I use the term here, includes more than just your general perception of shyness. I'm also talking about the social anxiety that comes with interacting with people you aren't comfortable with. It doesn't matter if those people are part of your family or even your peers, because you're afraid of doing anything that will just put yourself out there. That's introvertedness as I use it here. If someone knocks on the door, you hide. And if you can help it, someone else will order your food for you. And screw the hibachi, they make you sit with strangers, so you're never gonna do that. But on the other hand, I have the word extrovert, which is a little bit harder to define because I only started learning about it personally recently. And experiencing what it's like to be one is still kind of new to me, but I'm working on it. Extrovertedness, at least how I use it here, is the ability to overcome that fear that you have as an introvert. And maybe not all of it, but it's a work in progress because these are two very subjective terms. Anyone can get nervous about talking in a job interview, but some people get more nervous than others. And it's that blurry boundary that separates extroverts, people who can put themselves out there, and introverts, because we all still have that fear deep inside us, but it's the ability to conquer that fear that puts the two apart. Now, when I was a kid, I obviously wasn't allowed to talk to strangers. They rammed that into you in elementary school. Your parents told you that. It was just like a no-brainer. Don't talk to strangers. And who nowadays just lets your kid walk up to random people and talk unsupervised? But implementing that as a law for raising your kids does leave the kid with some sort of weird void. How are you supposed to acquaint yourself with anyone if you aren't supposed to talk to people? How do you make friends if you don't like anyone around you, if you don't like anyone at your school? Obviously, there are reasons behind these sort of restraints. No one wants their children kidnapped and sold into human trafficking, but this sort of hovering also stops kids from running outside and just getting into childish mischief and learning things about the world themselves. Due to this sort of raising of children, I know plenty of people who barely know the way around the city they grew up in, just because they always had someone drive them even the shortest distances because they were afraid to let the kids go out by themselves or walk by themselves. This was like the sort of background I grew up in, and that made it also harder for me to interact with other people. Now, on top of these like normal restraints, I also had a couple other ones. I didn't have internet growing up. I wasn't allowed to talk on the phone with my friends because it ran up the phone bill. And when I was young, I did always have something to hide. That's like a personal thing I had. There were things that just made me quiet. There were things that scared me away from talking when I did have people around me. Not that I didn't like interacting with people or anything like that. It's just that there was something deep inside me, and I was always scared as a kid. But anyway, stuff like this made me a quiet person. I only talked to my friends, of which I only had a couple close ones, and that was always at school. And when school let out, I was by myself. Outside of school, I wasn't allowed to see them, and I didn't talk to a lot of other people for the simple matter that there weren't a lot of people to talk to. And of course, behind all of that, I was afraid. I was an introvert. I hated people. Yet I knew I couldn't lead my life without them. I always say that my life started on Wattpad, a site famous basically for their fan fiction, but they also have like regular upcoming young authors too. And I was attracted to it simply because I could write on it. I just got my first piece of technology ever, which was like this little netbook. And for those of you who don't know what a netbook is, it's a tablet that isn't touchscreen, but it has a full keyboard. It's like a laptop that only runs Amazon and Android stuff. It's really weird. But anyway, I was ready to expand my writing world when I got introduced to this Wattpad place. And I even found an open Wi-Fi network that I could exploit on the edge of my property. I wanted people to read my stories, because stories were the only partners in crime I had. Like, if I couldn't talk to my friends, I would write my own friends, and I had to write my own stories. And then stories became a really big part of my life, and they still are. But when you're sitting in the middle of a website where everyone is a writer, finding people to read your stuff is actually a really tall order. Now, I did have some common sense. So, under the pen name Shadowsleek, aka Maya Brava, I started reading and interacting with other authors. Really slowly at first, but I started. I did read for a read and comment for a comment, and if I couldn't get readers on my own behest, then trading for them was the next best thing. It gave me feedback and conditioned me to be able to write things that others would want to read. And it was during these early days that I found out about, never seeing people again. I used the word loss in my original draft, but that's a bit of a strong word. But there is something that happens really often on the internet. It's people just you never see again. It's very prevalent. Anyway, I remember there was this girl, and I don't remember too much about her because this was like 5-6 years ago, but she still stands out to me. She went by Penelope, and she was a Percy Jackson fanfic author. And we would read each other's fanfictions and stories and like original works that we did have. And now I'm not saying she was the best writer in the world, but neither was I. None of us are the best writer in the world. But us just being there for the short time, exchanging comments maybe once a day, it was nice. It was memorable. It made me want to do more. Now, she did disappear one day. She deleted her account. I remember searching for her and never seeing her again. It happens. It is an unfortunate part of the internet. Anyway, the thing with talking behind a screen, which is both a critique and a blessing to the internet form of communication, is that there's no ready repercussions for your words. Now, this allows people to say what they want, which can be a horrible thing for people who want to be horrible to others, but on the flip side, for people like me who just want to talk without being connected to the person or obligated to have to say something next, like you kind of have to do in real life, this is a blessing, because you always have the option to shut off the computer or just block the person, and that actually made it feel safer to talk. Like, they warn you about not talking to people on the internet either, but there is that backup. Now, again, you have to be safe about it. You don't give people personal information. You try to keep things like as general as possible, but you can still chat about things. You can chat about fandoms and things that you like. That sort of backup that you can block people or delete things or just go away. I know they say that everything on the internet stays on the internet forever, but you generally do have an option to like get rid of people from your lives very easily if you make connections with them online. Now, a lot of this may sound like cheating, but that safeguard was a stepping stool. It made me feel comfortable talking on the internet in ways that I didn't feel comfortable talking in real life. And slowly but surely, I started living people's lives side by side, kind of the way you would with a friend you have in real life. You know what they're doing today, you know when they work and things their cats like, you know what subjects they take in school and what they're struggling with and what they can and can't do. I knew the deepest things about the people I talked to. I knew when they were sad and when they were happy and when they were super excited. And over the next couple years, I was redeveloping my moral compass with this group of internet friends by my side because I was getting exposed to a variety of ideas and a variety of ways of living from all around the world. And it made me really open to different sort of ideas. Off the top of my head, I remember some of my first friends that ever made a huge impact. And if I went through all the ones who impacted my life in a massive way, we would be here all day. But off the top of my head, my first friends were two girls named Cadence and Demi. We shared a lot of common interests, and we did have a common sleeping schedule, so that helped a lot. One of us lived in Canada, the other in Texas, and of course I was in Michigan. And we would talk about the weather and things that we liked, and we wrote stories together starring us and our favorite characters. And that just sort of gave us a platform to get to know each other really well. I wrote 2 books during this time. They were fan fiction, sure, but they were complete stories nonetheless, and not everyone, especially at that age, can boast that they finished their stories. And in the present, I can't even say the same about myself anymore because I'm writer's block up the ass. But these 2 crazy girls opened my eyes to a world where people liked the same things that I did, and I could find people that I didn't hate. And then I could also learn to expand my own interests as well. That being said, I was still quiet to people in real life, but a door had been open and a path had been set, and I had people to look forward to now when I got home from school. Now, over these years, my abilities to communicate began to expand quite drastically, and I'm talking in real life, not just online. I always kept my internet friends by my side, but I was starting to join extracurriculars at school. Nothing that would put me out there too much, but enough to meet people with similar interests. And, this was high school, so this is when I was finally allowed to start joining extracurriculars. Back when I was younger, I wasn't. But I soon came to run the creative writing club at my school, which was my crowning achievement. Not my good grades, not my graduation, or my acceptance to college, because no offense, but basically anyone can do that. That may seem like a jab to some people, but we're all required to go to school anyway. And it's expected of us to, at least make it through. And that's kind of how I always viewed it. What I was really part of was my small group of crazy people telling stories that we wrote that week. It was a small student-run organization, and that made it homey. We could be social outcasts together. It was like being with my internet friends. If, my internet friends lived close enough to use me as their couch. And it was also during that time that I realized you can talk about the weather with just about anyone without sounding weird. And it was also at that point that I discovered the art of small talk. Small talk is the medium between I don't care about you or anything you're saying, and I have no plausible reason to be an asshole to you despite having no interest in furthering any sort of relationship with you. When I was 17, I took a volunteer job on Wetpad. This was before Canada edited their labor laws and said you had to be 18 to work, even as a volunteer. But anyway, Wattpad had given me so much in the name of media and stories and people that I wanted to give back as much as I could, even if it was just a little bit. So I worked directly with some of the main moderators of the site and met a lot of people with stories just like mine. We were here to approach stories and to read stories written by people our age. And I ended up turning into a content moderator myself, which means I sorted through the books to make sure everyone was in the right categories. It was a behind-the-scenes job, and I really loved it. Now, the training program for Wattpad actually is the basis for a lot of my moral compass. I speak good about the internet, but there are still a lot of mean people out there. Like, I cannot emphasize enough that you have to be careful, and you have to know how to deal with trolls. And to this day, I still take Wattpad's advice, which is not something everyone agrees with, but I find it to be pretty effective. And it's to always assume that the person on the other side of the message is acting with their best intentions. If something is getting heated, everyone should take a step back. And if you need to get involved in a dispute, never give the opposing side something they can hold over your head. If you say something mean to someone, they can hold it against you. If you snap at them, there is evidence against you. But if you're calm and firm and polite through the entire dispute, then if something gets legal or it gets brought up to a higher power, they can't hold any sort of evidence against you because you're trying to be as civil about it as possible while still trying to settle a dispute. Now, I always thought that arguing like this was a power move. I know that there are a lot of people who don't agree with this, but I like to think that you should be able to defend yourself calmly and civilly before you can defend someone else. And Wattpad was actually the first one to give me any practical advice for dealing with internet trolls via logic and critical thinking. They taught you to subdue your opponent with politeness, firmness, and passive aggressiveness, which is an argumentative technique I use to this day. And I only volunteered with them for about a year, but they did teach me some really valuable things. We could probably skip another couple years of context, because as riveting as the Heroes of Olympus 2 and 3 mystery thrillers, Summer Camp Diaries, and Guild of Graphics eras were, they're each a story in their own account, and I would hate to slander them by not telling them properly. Now, things were not all well and good through the years following my dive into the internet. I got in trouble, and I did some things that got me kicked out of school for the time. I was betrayed by the internet, and there were times when I thought I would never talk to those lunatics again. I'm leaving out a large chunk of story on purpose, because I still am not really comfortable telling it to anyone to the full context. It's been about 4 years, but, some things never leave us. Let's just say some bad stuff happened on the internet. Also bad stuff happened in real life too around the same time. And it affected my entire life. Any progress I had made towards being a more open and outward person was ruined enough that I started getting more secluded again. But also, at this point, it was a little bit too late to sink back into solitude. I had made connections, and there were people in real life who liked talking to me, and I couldn't get away from that without being a complete and utter dick. And I don't like being a complete and utter dick, so, I did what any good person who hurts does, and fake it until you make it. There are things that will never leave me, and there are things I'll never be okay with. But so what? It happened, and there's nothing we can do to change the past. I accepted the life as an internet persona, and that comes with the knowledge that the thing you love will hurt you, and it will hurt you so much that you wish there were times you didn't open your messenger apps, and just let the silence take you away. But the payoff, I'll tell you this, the payoff is always so worth it. Now, I wouldn't say that I completely conquered introvertedness and that the fear isn't there anymore. In real life, I walk a really fine line between needing to talk to people and needing to stay God's hell away from them. I've come to a really weird medium where I've become addicted to talking to people, but I also have that scraggly line between communication and being secluded, because that introvert side of me is still there. It never left. I still enjoy time to myself. In fact, I need it. But too much time alone also always ultimately leads to depression for me. I have to find some sort of happy medium, because I also find that being with people for too long is physically and mentally exhausting. I have flesh and blood friends, and I would do anything for them, but I can't spend all my time with them. Nor should I, nor can I. And they make me laugh and smile and allow the crazy side to come out. And I love them to death. And like, there's so much I would do for them. Like they keep me here. They keep me grounded. I am eternally grateful for them. But you also know how social interaction is. With school and work getting in the way, we can sometimes only see each other on special occasions or small amounts of time between classes. And something they don't prepare you for during high school is that you're going to be alone and surrounded by people you don't particularly care about for the majority of the time. And that hurts for someone who is still an introvert at heart, because as much as I can talk to other people now, they don't fill the same void as people that you've created a genuine connection with. And that's why the internet world has become an even bigger part of my life in the recent years, because my flesh friends are drifting farther, but I do know that I can still count on my internet friends to be there for at least a few hours at odd times of night. Because even around their own busy lives, we can still laugh and talk and have a good time because A, time zones are a thing, and B, they're working too. And this community of internet friends is as real as any group of friends you may have in real life. And far more accessible sometimes, I'd like to say. Anyway, I asked my online friends and acquaintances for their thoughts on the internet friend lifestyle, and this is what they had to say. My experience on the internet is a roller coaster, because you end up meeting people that share the same interests as you, while encountering people whose personalities are out of their league. Please don't, by the way, if I butcher your guys' name, I'm sorry. Is that xSweetoKyeForce? And from my friend Thea Queen, who was actually one of the people who introduced me to the YouTube side of the spectrum and got me into the current group of friends that I have, she says, I was completely unaware that you can even have this type of life 2 years ago, and there's been good times and bad times, but I'd say overall, the good greatly outnumbers the bad. Because I can't imagine a life without all the people I've encountered online at this point in time. We've come so far in such a short amount of time, and I hope it'll stay this way for as long as possible. Chris Martinez, aka That Cash Guy on Twitter, talked about his own online community and why he continues working with them. He says, "Sometimes they feel closer to me than my family. They understand me. It's not about what we do half the time. It's about enjoying it to make it less like work and more like a good time." When I first found the internet, I never thought it would become what it is today. Today we have communities for our favorite things, and online friends who have helped us through hard times when we have no one else to talk to. We all meet people who change our lives, whether it's digitally or physically. Silver. When asking one of my friends how she would describe the internet world, she said this. The community is like a rainbow filled with different colors or personalities that don't always match well with other colors. But the bonds we have with each other is strong enough to look past it and become one beautiful rainbow meme mess for the people we love so much to smile. Pikaharuka. And I'd like to end with a quote from Tumblr, and I'd like to end with a quote from Tumblr, because what's a video about the internet without Tumblr? And I think it does sum out basically all my feelings towards the internet communities that I've developed, and the internet communities I've joined and taken part of, and all the massive projects that have gotten us to this day. I'm not addicted to the internet. I'm addicted to all the amazing people I find on the internet. And if all you beautiful fuckers live next door, then I'd never be online. Anonymous.